Hey guys, welcome back to the Joy of Wrenching. I'm your friendly neighborhood mechanic, and today in the shop I've got this Toyota Prius, and it, like many cars that get a lot of miles on them, has a problem. When you go over a bump, you hear this noise, clunk, 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 clunk. So if you've got that problem where you're hearing a clunk or a clang going over bumps, I want to show you how easy it is to diagnose what's causing that and then fix it. So come along and let's get into it. So like I said, this car and a lot of cars, when they start getting a lot of miles on them, especially these suspension and steering parts, they start to loosen up. And you know, they're moving parts, and they're in a very active environment, and so it's not unusual for them to wear out over time. And this Prius is set up like most cars, most modern unibody cars anyway. You've got a strut that comes down to a knuckle, which your wheel is all attached to. You've got some steering suspension, and then to keep the car from rolling, they'll put these sway bars on it. And all that does is it keeps the car from going womp, womp, womp through all these turns, right? So it stays more stable and more flat as you're going around a turn. But look right over here. This connection from that sway bar to the strut is called a steering stabilizer or end link, or a sway bar end link. And a lot of times these things are the source of your clunking and your clanking going over bumps. And so I'm going to show you how to tell if that's a problem with your car, and then if so, how to fix it. So my favorite way to check all these steering and suspension parts underneath the car is to get it up off the ground. You know, I've got a lift here, but you can do this jack stands at your house in your driveway, and get a rubber dead blow hammer or rubber mallet of some kind and a crowbar. And what you want to do is you want to come up underneath here, come on over and take a look, and you just want to take, I like to go first with the hammer, and you just want to tap around and see if you hear anything loose. You want to compare the sounds that you're hearing from one side to the sounds that you're hearing from the other. Notice this right here. This is that sway bar, and here's the bottom of that end link. As I hit that, there's no noise, but look what happens when I do it over here. You hear that? I'm going to do this one. Nothing. So that tells you there's something going on, something different between those two ends. And you can take your crowbar and you can put it into little places and try and move things like the ball joints. You can try and move things like these end links if you want. But a lot of times, just moving these parts by hand, you'll see that they've got play in them. And I can feel that there's a little bit of play in this bottom part of this end link. So that's how you determine where the noise might be coming from. If you see some play in any of these parts that are supposed to be nice and tight, that's the thing that you want to look at. In this case, we've got a worn out set of end links, and we're going to replace those. Okay, so to take these end links off of here, come around here and take a look and see what we've got going on. We've got a nut that holds it on, and in this case it's a 17 millimeter. But notice inside of the center of that nut, there's an Allen head, okay? So sometimes if you're lucky, just trying to spin that nut off, it'll actually come off. But a lot of times what'll happen is that inner portion will just spin, and we may have to use an Allen to hold it. But let's see what happens. Oh, well, it loosened up, but now the whole thing is spinning. So let me show you what you do if that happens. So if you try to loosen up the nut and the whole thing spins, come look right here. You see, as I'm trying to turn the outer nut, the inner part is spinning around. If you find that's the case, get you an Allen that fits in there. In this case, it's a 5 mil. And you want to hold that center part in place while you're loosening that nut. One thing you can do is you can get one of these ratcheting wrenches and hold the center in place and just use the ratcheting wrench. But another thing you can do is put the Allen on something such that you can turn it tighten it while holding the outside. Watch this. And that really speeds up the process right there. And now you can see that you can remove that end link and go to the top and do the same thing. So we got the bottom of the sway bar end link disconnected from the sway bar, and now it's time to come up to the top and do the same. And we're going to see if we can get lucky again and just use our 17 to spin this loose. In that case, we actually did. You see how it actually came apart this time, and we didn't have to hold the center with the Allen. But a lot of times you're going to have to hold that center portion with your Allen. Now it's time to put the new one on. Here's the old stabilizer end link, and the way it ought to be is you ought to have a lot of tension. It ought to be very difficult to turn the stud here inside of that end. Now the one that was on the bottom over here that was making all that noise, look how floppy that is. And if I go in and out, I can actually feel, maybe you can see that between here and here, there's actually motion. And that looseness, that little bit of motion, it doesn't take much, just a hair of motion. And it will resonate through the car. And that's where you get that clink, 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 clink going over all those bumps. So we're going to replace these with some good ones. Hey guys, just a quick note. If this is helping you out, if you're appreciating this kind of content, do me a favor. All I ask is that you hit that subscribe button down below. It really helps me to reach a greater audience, help your fellow man out with all of these auto repair tips. Thank you guys for your time. Let's get back to it. So we got a new set of stabilizer end links here, and they come with typically new nuts, and they also have that Allen to hold the center if you have to. We're going to see if we can't get lucky and put this in here with just the impact. So just like the old one came out, we're going to come in from the back here, put the new one in, get our new nut started by hand, and then I'm going to grab the impact here and see if we can't tighten it up. Now the new nut is an 18, whereas the old one that we took off was a 17, but no big deal. And that tightened up absolutely perfect. You can tighten that thing up, torque it to spec if you'd like. Your vehicle specs are probably going to be different than this one. But let's go ahead and do the bottom one now. All right, so we've got this upper portion of our stabilizer end link connected. You see that that's nice and sturdy. It stays where you want it to. We're going to go ahead and put the lower portion back into the sway bar. You just take off your nut, line it at the stud, push it through. Again, always start these things by hand. You don't want to cross thread anything. And let's just see if we can get lucky and secure this with the impact alone. Sure enough, there it is. That's tight. So this end is done. So I wanted to show you that just in case yours doesn't tighten up with the impact or whatever, you can put your wrench on there, and if you're turning to tighten that nut, see, if I'm turning to tighten that nut, I've already tightened this one with the impact, but if you're turning it and the whole thing's spinning again, just put your wrench in there, put your Allen key in there, hold the Allen steady, and tighten it up with your wrench. That was it, guys. You see how easy that was? To replace those old clunky parts that are falling, making all those noises. Just get online, get you a set of replacement parts, unbolt the old one, rebolt in the new one, whatever it is that happens to be loose and clunky underneath, and you can get rid of that annoying rattle, that annoying clunk that you're hearing as you go over those bumps. As I said, this is a Toyota Prius, but this setup is the same on just about 90% of the cars out there, and a lot of trucks too. So next time you hear some noise underneath, you wonder what it is, just put it up in the air, bang around till you find where it's at, and then replace that part. Super easy. Hopefully you guys learned a lot. Hopefully your car will be a much quieter and safer ride soon. I appreciate you guys tuning in today. Thank you again. God bless.